What are your biggest takeaways from minicamp?
So I think the biggest thing is the foundation that's being laid more as much for building long-term success rather than I don't know what they're going to be like this year. I think there's still things that we just don't know. We don't know how, and it's not like with the offensive line. It's not just that there were obviously questions, whatever you want to call it, last year for a variety of reasons. It's also that they've put a new group together. And, you look at continuity is the best thing on an offensive line. And you look at 2 years ago, one guy on that starting group is back, and that's Sam Cosmi. So, that's tough to build a good group like that right away. So while I think they've improved the interior for sure, we don't know how that's going to manifest itself or when it's going to do that, right? There's a new system on offense. There's a rookie quarterback. Do they have enough around him? We don't know those questions. Those will be answered this fall. And the same defensively, we don't know how it's going to look at corner, right? We don't know, how this is all going to look. I do think it's going to be better for sure.
Yeah.
I think so I say that, like, I separate when I talk about the spring, I separate the here and, like the immediate future versus the long-term building for success. And I think they're in a better spot in that area than they have been in a long time. And because I do think, setting the tone for how you do things in a building, how you practice, how you want to do X, Y, or Z, I just think it's better. And so I think like that. So when I'm looking at it like long-term, I like the approach. Short term, I don't know where it's going to go.
I think what they are actually doing, the way that they're doing it, is what we were told was going to happen in the previous regime. They brought in people that basically will help them get there quicker. But this is something that they're trying to establish that's going to last forever. Like I would always tell, every time a coach came to this team, everything changed up.
Yes.
Every time a coach came. So they always wanted to say, oh,
they totally reversed course.
Yeah, but you look at other teams, and other teams do the same stuff for decades because the GM is running things, not necessarily the coach.
Correct.
And I think that's what they're trying to do, set this thing up to where as it moves forward, you're not going to be down very long.
Correct. And I think that's why I say I think that's the biggest difference, the biggest change, and the best change.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. And it's not just whether it's a coach. You have an organization. The number one thing they had to get right finally was the organizational setup. And that starts with the owner.
Right.
Like it always starts there. And then do you get the right people after that? And with Adam Peters, I mean, they certainly got a guy that a lot of people liked, right? And then, I think with the coaching staff, I think what you've seen with that is, I know people have heard a lot about this, but a great deal of energy. In the past you'd have like, well, this coach has energy, but the staff, you didn't feel that. This staff has energy. I mean, you go watch like Daryl Tapp's group work and just how he gets them going. And it's not because he's sitting there, he's energetic, he's juiced, but it's the way your approach and like how you're teaching them, the way you're getting to compete. And like, those are the things that I'm watching these guys the other day doing a drill, it's a competition drill, hitting the sled. It's two guys at a time. And they're jumping in like John Allen and Deron Payne jump in to go against each other, right? They're pairing random guys, but it's a competition thing. I'm like, it's June 12th. And it looks like these guys are having fun at practice. And not that this isn't about having fun and getting orange slices at halftime, but when you're having fun there, you want to do more and you like to
motivate,
be there.
Right.
Yes. I think like that's the long-term building stuff.
Totally. I think you cannot make any bold declarations from June minicamp, right? You're not wearing pads. To your earlier point, we have no idea what this line's going to be.
Right.
We don't know what the secondary is going to look like. I don't know who their pass. I think Armstrong's pretty clearly locked in, and then is Farrell first and second down, and then is it Davis? Is it Luga? Like, there's a lot of questions.
Right. There's a lot.
But undeniably, the enthusiasm surrounding just the mundane. I mean, June minicamp is pretty damn mundane, and the enthusiasm surrounding it seems legitimate and sincere. and not going anywhere. And that's a
but
difference.
The enthusiasm is coming from the players out there doing it, and not us have to generate something.
Sure, agreed.
Right? No, that's a good point. And the other thing is, so it's the spring, right? And in the spring, on June 12th, I'm watching Bobby Wagner go through special teams drills. Do you know what I mean?
That's
like
crazy.
And it's just like a little thing, but he's going through them. He's not mailing it, and he's going through them. I'm watching Zach Ertz working off to the side during some of that special teams work, where he's just like talking to the coach about releases and coming off the line, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Like when you see guys like that doing stuff like that, I think it has an effect. And, you would like to think it has an effect. So I think like there's some of that you see, but there's a lot of guys, and like Terry McLaurin certainly seems to be energized by this change. By a lot of the changes, whether it's the offense in general, Jayden Daniels. Yeah. I definitely think that he was as praiseworthy of a young quarterback as I've ever heard him. And but I think I know Terry well enough to know when he doesn't BS, but like when he's trying to say something without saying something, you can tell sometimes.
Terry is a master of politely throwing serious shade.
Yeah. I mean, yes, exactly. He's like, and
late last season, we heard a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah. And like, but even after the Giants game up in the Meadowlands, like he said some stuff like, if this were a different player, that's a headline. With him, it's a good insight in a story, right? Mm-hmm. And that's good. But like, so he's effusive with that. So I think you have guys coming back, Sam Cosmi, who are energized by this change. We could rattle off a long list. Right. And then you mix it with having a lot of new guys coming in, and then you mix that with the staff. BMitch, like I think there's like 13 ex-players on this staff, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
I think with that, players, not every player is going to have that, right? I mean, some players aren't as energetic, but it does bring a different level of energy to it. Because, so I think you mix it all together and you create a situation that was more conducive to guys. I mean, guys were talking about enjoying going to the building. And who is it? I think with JP, was it Wiley or one of those guys, lineman was talking about, oh no, it was Wiley. Because the day we waited for him.
Yeah. Just you and I did. Just you and I did, John. Right. Committed to the job.
Yeah. Shout out Ben and Nikki. But remember what he said, that he goes, this is like 3 hours after practice ended. He goes, half the guys are still in the locker room.
Yeah. Those things make a difference. And I know so many times we get so caught up in the hustle and bustle, but veteran players, like you said, Bobby Wagner doing that. When I was in Philly, Troy Vincent and Bobby Taylor were your starting corners. They were both on special teams. Al Harris was your nickel. He was on special teams. Brian Dawkins was your starting safety. He was on special teams. So nobody else on the team could complain.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think we went through decades, not a decade, but decades here, where if a guy was starting, he wasn't touching those, he wasn't going to ever look at special teams. And the special teams started to suck for a long time around here.
They had a guy, there was one safety years ago who was a low round pick who was starting, and you can go back and figure it out, who did not like being on special teams. I'm like, listen, man, Sean Taylor played special teams.
True.
Period.
Right.
Yeah, man. But it's like you have to expect that from your players and demand it from them.
Correct.
A lot of these coaches never demanded that.
Right, and I don't know that Wagner's going to play special teams in the season. I just know that in the spring he's here taking part in the drills. And like, you know what I mean? Like he could have said, I'm just going to work off to the side on drops or coverage or whatever.
Right.
But he's in there doing that.
Or he could just be like, I'm going to stand off to the side and just stand there for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
And he's not doing that.
Because I'm Bobby Wagner, damn it. And you know what I mean? Like, because like it's funny to listen to guys talk about him. Like they get this look in their eyes like, I mean, it's Bobby Wagner.
Terry said that.
Terry said that. Tressway was like that. Like a number of guys have been like that. But the good thing is that Wagner himself does the work and he understands his role. And so, like, I don't think there probably have been guys here in the past who would have like viewed themselves the same way. I think Bobby Wagner knows exactly who he is, but I also think he knows why he is who he is, right?
Yeah.
And so I think like that makes a difference. But, I think, I don't know, it's a good mix. And again, they could be a 7-win team. I don't know.
I kind of think they are, but it's still it's about long-term growth.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's why I say for the first time, and it's hard for a fan base to be as patient as this one and have to go be patient again. But I think even for them, if you see growth and you see you can see the plan, the approach, and especially in the quarterback, you see that in him. I think you say, okay, maybe this year was like this, but that's the last year. It may be like that for a while.
Yeah, I think that's what they're looking for. Definitely.
Talking with our friend John Keim here on the BetQL guest line. Sports betting has come to the DMV. Don't place that first bet without checking with BetQL. You can follow John at John_Keim, Keim. The other part of all this, Johnny, watching it unfold is, I said this to, I don't know, it might have been, I was talking with CK this morning, how Dan Quinn went out of his way to recognize Ken Norton yesterday, who's the linebackers coach. Like that just stuck with me as there's no like grandstanding stuff. You know what I mean? Like I asked Wagner the other day, hey man, I know it's only June, but what do you think of this team right now? And he's like, man, it's June. Ask me after the preseason games. And I loved that DQ didn't try to make some like grand statement about the really good attendance. He's like, yeah, it might help a little bit when we get to camp. Like there's an honesty to it that feels important.
Well, and I think that goes back to everything we said. Like it's when you're trying to establish something here and build a foundation. And I think if you're just trying to win this year, you'd sell certain things harder. I think they know exactly what they're trying to do and the approach they're taking, right? So, yeah, I mean, even with Jayden Daniels, and I mean, people have been effusive about him, just as much about what they've seen and again, his approach. But Austin Eckler was like, yeah, we're really not going to, like, I'm proud of what he's done so far, but we're not going to really know until the preseason to see, well, what's it going to look like and how long things might take. And that's fine. Like, and that's why when, we've all talked about Jayden Daniels, and you can't help but praise a lot of what you see, but you don't know what that means for this year. I just think that, for the way he approaches it is the right way. Yeah. Now, you can't sit here and wonder, you don't know about health down the road. We don't know, because then it's also up to the organization to then, all right, this player is doing this. This quarterback is taking this approach. Now the organization now has to do its part around him, and that's building the roster out around him and not just relying on him to be that guy, like build the roster. And how long does that take? And so like, there's still so many questions, but I do know that his approach is the right one. Like you can't be good without taking that approach. I mean, you may not be great, but you can't be good if you don't do that. Because we've seen that here.
Well, if he wasn't doing the things he was doing, he damn sure wouldn't be good.
Right. Exactly.
So we don't know what it would be, but I think he's doing it the right way, like you just stated. And if he keeps doing that and, keep getting that praise from his veteran players and things of that nature, it'll be okay, because guys work for people that they see work.
Oh, listen, that's why, like, I mean, you hear the Baltimore players talk about Lamar Jackson. I remember a few years ago, guys talking about, like, I'd do anything for this guy because they see what he does and puts into it.
Yeah.
And I also think when you have a level of humility, I think it also goes a long way, especially when you're the number 2 pick and a Heisman Trophy winner. That humility helps.
Yeah.
And, and I think, I mean, he's very clear that, he's got a long way to go. And he doesn't view himself as, hey, I'm here to be this or that. He's here to play his role. Now, his role is to be a really good quarterback.
Uh-huh.
But to get there, how do you do that? And I think that's where what he, I think, understands very well, because it's all the stuff that he's done before. You don't get here and start working. You get here because, for what he's done is I mean, you know this, BMitch. You get here because of the work you put in for him, right?
Definitely.
And so, I don't know, but again, we don't know what it's going to look like for him because there are other factors that go into it. How does this offense evolve around him? But this is where, I like that they have Ertz and Eckler here, veteran guys who are safety nets for a young quarterback. But we don't know. We don't know how it's going to look. But, again, the behind the scenes stuff has been all really good.
Yeah.
Did either of you happen to see any of Tom Brady's speech the other night at Foxborough?
No.
He just talked about how hard it is to be great.
Yeah.
And that, greatness is really, really hard to achieve. And I think it's just such an honest message. And I think that's what clicked for Jayden at LSU is he realized the work that has to go in.
I would guarantee you he's talking more about the work that you put into it than he is the football game.
Well, listen, and
you know what I mean?
You're right.
Yeah, he's not talking about Sundays.
Like I tell, and that's what people don't understand. The games are easy. What the hell you do before the game? Anybody would show up and play on Sunday in front of the lights and get paid for it. But most people don't want to get to Sunday. You know what I mean? They don't want to put that same work in when the cameras aren't on.
Well, and I think that goes to what are you here to do? Are you here? Is it the money and the fame? Is it to become a really good player? And you don't become. I don't hear a lot of great players coming in saying, "I'm going to be great." It's you're going to put in the work to get there, and you're putting in a certain amount of work every day. And maybe you've been blessed with a certain level of talent, and you work a certain way, then you do become great. But guys don't come here saying I'm going to be I don't think Tom Brady or Peyton Manning went to their teams and said, I'm going to become a Hall of Fame quarterback. I think they understood my goal, Tom Brady's goal is to make the team. So how do you do that? You have to outwork everybody. Then suddenly you're outworking everybody. Suddenly you're getting first team snaps. Now, and so and then you work harder to stay there. So but it all starts with that. If you don't take that approach, then you flame out.
Totally.
and then, that's why I do believe Jayden Daniels, while he's a guy that has electric running ability, is considered more of a passer than a runner because that's, and you hear the guy, one of the best things that you hear, and you hear this publicly and privately, is just the anticipatory throws he made during practice. And Terry McLaurin talked about that. He's after a couple of crossers, he's telling guys, you got to make sure you're looking because he's going to throw it even if you don't think you're open, even if you're not open yet. Right. So that's from work.